Hello and welcome back to another episode of the GDM Playbook podcast. I am super excited to chat with our guest today. This guy is a serial entrepreneur who's founded multiple startups, including a successful exit to the multi-billion-dollar fintech giant Brex. He's also an active angel investor with a personal portfolio of over 40 companies. And if that's not impressive enough, he is now the CEO of 11x, an AI startup that's building autonomous digital workers with a mission to completely change how go-to-market teams operate. In today's episode, we're going to unpack how digital workers are reshaping the GTM playbook and what the future looks like when AI isn't just a tool to assist humans, but a co-worker working alongside them. Prahav, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, let's kick off with your story, which is a super interesting one, from being an MIT graduate to a founder to having a successful exit to now leading one of Silicon Valley's most talked about AI startups. Keen to know, how did this whole journey unfold and what led you into the world of building and scaling tech companies?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a great question. Whenever you look back at your own kind of background, it's always really interesting to be like, how did I even end up here? So I guess for me, I've always been a builder. My dad was a programmer, so I started playing with computers when I was really, really young. I was probably like had my first laptop when I was in, I don't know, kindergarten or first grade. And so pretty early on, I was always like dabbling with things. But I would say I really got into like technology and building things with technology when I was in high school. So in one of the first side projects I worked on when I was in high school became like this massive hit, like had millions of users. And I was like this like little kid sitting in his room, in San Diego, California, made something, put it up because it was useful for me, and now suddenly all these people are using it. I'm like, wow, like you can have like a real impact and actually build something that affects a ton of lives. And that kind of insight is what led me to, after that, I went to MIT. And I spent a lot of my time there also working on side projects or doing research and spending not as much time in the actual classroom. And, I met a few really awesome friends in college. And so I wanted to graduate early to start working on my first startup. And, as startups go, we had this really lofty mission, which was we want to organize the world's knowledge. Think like crossed with like a Medium, crossed with like a Google Docs, right? We ended up raising a pretty large seed round with some amazing investors from Silicon Valley, and we're kind of off to our races. But first startup, young, inexperienced founder, knew how to build stuff, but nothing else, right? And so I probably made every mistake you can imagine in the books. I spent a ton of time just like building cool stuff and not enough time with customers to make sure we're solving like really big problems. We were really fortunate because we were a team of builders to get a ton of acquisition interest. But we were kind of enamored by this idea of organizing the world's knowledge. So we kept building. Eventually, we pivoted that company slightly to be more of like an AI powered community discussion platform. We felt that was the most frictionless way to actually get knowledge into the system. What we realized was that the types of communities that were taking off on our platform were learning communities. So people were trying to actually learn a specific skill together. So we doubled down on that and built kind of the best platform for creating content and learning. And this is like pre-Gen AI. We had a bunch of AI stuff in our platform. And so when we had this generative tech, we started getting a lot of acquisition interest again from a lot of folks in the e-learning space. And that's ultimately where Brex came in. Brex like, look, we're not in e-learning, but we want you to come build a lending business. And I'm sure, we can teach you everything you need to know about finance. But, what we're really looking for is like hungry builders and hungry founders. So ultimately, we sold our company to Brex. I helped launch our first capital products and lending business. And I ultimately grew to leading all of engineering for financial services. This is our credit card product, our banking product, our global products, our risk teams, our money movement infrastructure, onboarding, rewards is a core part of our business. That was an insane journey, right? I joined when it was a couple hundred people, left when it was over 1,000 people. At this point, Brex had gotten really big, and I was really itching to kind of go back to early stage. And so, when I look back, it's like when I was a founder, I was really good at building things and bringing these products to life, but it's more challenging for me to go to market pieces. So helping build these AI agents that let companies grow by automating a lot of the manual labor that people have to do to grow was really attractive to me, like a personal level. And so the thing that got me really excited and why I chose to join 11x was like the second order effects. So today, a typical company probably spends about 40% of their entire revenue on sales and marketing. And for me, I was like, okay, if I'm able to automate all this manual labor and all these costs, like what happens? Like you actually can now pass on those cost savings to end consumers. So today, like, instead of something costing thousands of dollars, now it can cost hundreds. And so you open up a completely new economic model of growth for companies out there. It's the same thing that like the cloud did for a lot of companies. Like now we can pay Netflix $15 and get access to like the entire corpus of the world's content, right? It's super cheap. There's no way you could have done that once cloud became a thing. And that's the same thing I think agents is going to do for go to market.
Yeah, absolutely. And was that like aha moment that you had when, you first came across X and you're like, this doesn't just look like another product, another software tool, but, something that's going to be much bigger.
Exactly. Exactly. It's also like the kind of problem technology fit was just so clear, right? And the biggest thing for me was like this technology now enables all these things that just weren't possible before and have been bane for so many companies' growth. And so I think that fit was like the key thing.
You mentioned before that you made every mistake under the sun during those
Yeah.
early years and almost going through your own business apprenticeship. Can you kind of unpack, like, what were some of those key lessons that you learned during those early days that have shaped how you operate today?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the biggest things I learned was it's how to dream really big and then work backwards to get there from where you are today. Right. Something I learned from the founder of Brex. And that means that you take a bunch of baby steps. You keep moving towards this end really big, lofty goal that you have. And the only people that have ever achieved these massive, unthinkable things were like the crazy ones to try, right? To try to do these things. And so, in terms of like the challenges we face, and the problems we had, like the biggest thing was just not giving up because that means you have another shot tomorrow. Then you get to try again, right? I remember across my first few startups, I probably tried so many different ideas and pivoted for like 7 years, right? That's kind of the length of time I did kind of trying my first batting at like these startups. It just made me learn so much about problem solving across not just product engineering, but sales, customer success, marketing, communicating both internally and externally. All these skill sets I would have never picked up if I just went into a corporate job right out of college, right? Because you're forced to do everything. And so I think the journey at Brex, when I grew quite quickly internally, so I started as like a team lead of like 3 or 4 people, went to leading our most largest and most critical engineering organization, the company. That growth also prepared me because it was like, okay, like you can just go and do things, right? As long as you optimize for the business and for your customers, like you can get a ton of success. And so I think like those were the biggest lessons for me. Just like never give up, keep trying, right? Keep getting better every single day, and then focus on the business.
Yeah, so true. I speak to a lot of founders, and that never giving up piece and that resilience, I feel, is the common theme when it comes to those key attributes in entrepreneurs. It's that ability to push through when things get tough and not, giving up in those scenarios, which what sets them apart. Cool. Well, now keen to now kind of transition into your time at 11x. Like, if you can walk me through, like, how did you get started? Like, how'd you get involved with the company?
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually had like an executive recruiter reach out to me, of all things. And, she had this like interesting thing of like, hey, there's this company doing something kind of crazy, really small team based in London. Like you should talk to them. I'm like, oh, okay. It sounds kind of interesting. And as I dug in like more and more, I realized like how much time, effort, tooling, costs, enablement it took modern go-to-market teams to be efficient. It kind of reminded me back in the day when you had these really large IT teams that would manage all these custom servers just to like launch a website. And then like AWS, Amazon Web Services came out, and suddenly like you could have like these 2 people sitting in their room and launch a website globally, right? And I think that massive impact of that technological change on the world, like we're still seeing that today. And I think the realization for me was like this is go to market's moment, right? And so that's where this notion of like X being like an engine for companies' growth really started to hammer home for me because we're consolidating not just all the software that folks were using, but all the manual labor as well. So then became a platform where you're only limited by your own creativity. And that was like the big compound thing that led me to join.
And for anyone not familiar with X, if you can just explain for us, what exactly does 11X do and what specific problems does your product solve for GDM teams?
Yeah, totally. And maybe to motivate this, I'll talk about like let's say you're a typical CRO or revenue leader today, right? One of the biggest things you have to do is grow a pipeline. If you don't have pipeline, you don't have sales. If you don't have sales, you don't have revenue, right? And kind of the job of a company is to grow revenue, right? And so growing pipeline through these traditional channels has gone really, really, really hard, right? Today, every company has some version of the same go-to-market playbook, the same tools, the same data, the same outreach tactics. So what used to work at scale in the past now just kind of blends in to the noise, right? So today's go-to-market teams, they juggle 20 plus disconnected tools to run their pipeline generation plays across outbound, across inbound. And now you need specialized expensive teams to just even orchestrate these things. Like we have a new role in the market, right? The go-to-market engineer. And that's what's required, right? To actually make these things work. And so, every new SDR you hire takes months to become productive. They need access, they need training, they need context across all these systems before they can even send an intelligent piece of outreach, right? And let's say now they're fully ramped, a couple months later, but your product and your messaging is changing. So you have this endless cycle of like enablement. It's the same story for every product launch, every pricing change, every go-to-market pivot, gotta enable everyone all over again. And then every great idea you have kind of just dies in this chain. Like your CRO goes to the CMO, your CMO goes to product marketing, then it goes to enablement, then it goes to the SDR. And by the time you actually have something on the market, like you've kind of lost the ball already. And so, what we believe is to kind of break through the noise, you really need research driven, like persona specific and hyper personalized messaging tied to real pain and value at the exact time when a buyer is in market. So they need to be able to engage this buyer across a bunch of different channels. And they need to be able to run experiments in hours, not in weeks. And so, it's a long way of saying, what LemonX actually does, but, we're building the first intelligent organization platform across all the go-to-market stack. So LemonX automates how revenue teams generate, qualify, and convert pipeline by coordinating every workflow across all your data, all your outreach, and your CRM. So LemonX replaces all that patchwork I mentioned earlier with a coordinated system of AI agents that work together like a digital team, right? We have two workers in the market today. Alice is our digital outbound SDR. Alice will find the right leads, leverage data inside your CRM, find the right intent signals, look at our up-to-date, third-party data sources, even search the web for niche audiences, and look at visitors coming to your website. And then Alice will, once it's found a set of leads to go after, will do expert level, extensive research. They'll access public information on the web. They'll look at news, interviews, podcasts, reports, and even social posts, right? They'll combine all of that with knowledge it has about your company's products, your services, the case studies and successes that you've gotten as a business. And taking all those things together, it'll generate these highly relevant and personalized sequences across multiple channels. And it will scale that outreach, right? So it'll maintain all the email infrastructure, it'll do all the deliverability, it'll do everything to make sure that once you've done all this work, that message actually lands where your buyer is. And that's kind of Alice. Julian is on the flip side, is a digital phone agent. Julian handles inbound and consented outbound use cases. So when someone signs up for a demo on your website, Julian calls them back within seconds, qualifies them, answers questions, and gets the sales meeting booked with your account executive.
That's so cool.
All in an automatic fashion. Exactly. Julian can even nurture and upsell your leads, can help prospects navigate onboarding, and it operates 24/7 across many languages and is super, super integrated into your workflows. We're also releasing a new chatbot soon. So Julian is now available not just through voice, but also through a chatbot. Underpinning this entire sort of all of our digital workers is an intelligence layer. You connect them both together, you analyze what's working across campaigns, you refine ICPs, you improve results continuously. That's a little bit of what LemonX is trying to do.
Yeah, so cool. Because like as a GDM leader, like this is so exciting to hear. And, those pain points and problems that you just explained is, what we've been dealing with for decades, where, you know, you've got these SDRs, you're having to train them up, you know, typically have short tenures. And, you know, I don't think anyone in sales really wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what, I can't wait to just go and build lists of our TAM and start researching these. Like most sales reps just want to be, you know, demoing, closing deals, making money. And it sounds like your product solves those problems, which is really exciting. Now, it sounds like really sophisticated technology. You know, you've got these AI agents that are researching and being able to personalize these email cadences and messaging to your prospects, calling up prospects and being able to represent your company. If you could just walk me through, like, how do you actually get these AI agents trained up, knowing your product and what's involved in that process? And more importantly, like, how long does it take for someone to set up, launch, and actually start producing results?
Totally. I mean, we typically get teams set up and running quite quickly, a couple of weeks, right? They can kind of be fully ramped. And most of the time is really just taken to like buy mailboxes, warm them up, make sure we have all the enablement material. So the way we describe it to our customers is, let's say you hire SDR today. Like, what do you give them? You probably give them like some enablement materials, some slide decks, some call recordings, some case studies, educate them about your business and your services. So the same kind of training, the same documents, the same recordings you're giving to your human rep, give the same things to us. Now, Alice will learn a lot faster, right? Because she can ingest a lot of this content very quickly. You also tell us about your brand voice, right? Like, are you more like edgy, or are you more like empathetic, or like give us some more examples of like your tone. And we'll make sure that Alice and Julian follow that, right? So, you know, once you give us all this data, and like this data is like, I just want to stress, super important. You put garbage in, you're gonna get garbage out. Just like if you don't enable, you know, a rep that you hire, they're not gonna do well, right? And so agents can run quite quickly as long as they have the right data being fed in. So it's actually interesting because the ramp up time for an agent is actually much faster than for a human because the processing time is super quick.
So it's very similar to just basically hiring a new human rep in your team. It doesn't allow for, you know, poor onboarding. You need to still onboard them properly, train them up. But it sounds like at the end of that process, you know, you've got this AI agent that works 24/7, you know, doesn't take sick days, doesn't take smoko breaks, you know,
Right.
doesn't take mental health days, and is working for you 24/7. And what you've trained it memorizes as well.
Correct. And you know, we talked earlier about this whole enablement piece when things change. If you want to change this knowledge, you just give it new documents and boom, it's off to the races. Doesn't take another 3 weeks to train them, another month to train them. It takes half a day now. You just give it a document, you test its knowledge, and it's good to go.
Now, you've positioned 11x as replacing software with digital workers. Can you unpack what does that actually mean in practical terms?
Yeah, you know, we view ourselves as a force multiplier on human labor. So we want humans to work on high leverage and like creative tasks rather than the rote, repetitive manual work that many folks in good market organizations do today. You know, SDRs and BDRs, as you mentioned earlier, is a really high turn role, right? And it makes sense. Like you said, no one gets out of bed thinking, "Oh wow, like, we'll do so much research today. I'm gonna build all these lists, right?" And then go hit the emails and phones. Like it's not a fun, repetitive thing to be keep doing kind of every single day. And so for the first time, instead of like, you know, SaaS, like software as a service, you have the other SaaS, which is, you know, service as a software, right? And so, you know, at 11x, we don't have any BDRs or SDRs. Our sales team can actually create campaigns, and our platform can autonomously build pipeline, you know, including cold, net new leads, as well as nurturing existing prospects, marketing campaigns, and handling all of our inbound leads, right? Anyone in our company that has an idea can just go launch it and test it out and see how it works, right? It's deeply integrated with our CRM. So we're not only reach out to any existing opportunities or things in progress, right? And so, like I said, like your only cap on growth is just now your creativity. Like there's no tools, there's no orchestration, nothing's blocking you from achieving like the full potential of your business.
Super interesting. And like, now, I know the market is flooded right now with AI
Yeah.
tools. You've got Clay, Instantly, Unify, and hundreds of others. And everyone I speak to, whether it's at conferences or webinars, they tend to give the impression that they're overwhelmed by the amount of choice that's out there. And sometimes that choice gives a little bit of AI paralysis, and they don't actually take any action because they don't know where to start. Can you explain for us, how does a digital worker approach different to those other tools? And if you can walk me through, what are some of the real differentiators that make 11x stand out as well?
Totally. You know, If you think about it, like if you think about just the history of SaaS in general, like today, if you go to a typical company and ask them like how many software or tools you have, they'll probably say hundreds, in some cases thousands, right? Because the way SaaS evolved was like we'll do this like one small thing really, really well, right? But to run a business, to do your job, you need hundreds of those small things, right? Humans don't just do one task, they do an entire workflow, right? And so today, what you find is that most products in the market are still focused on a very specific slice, right? Maybe they're a data vendor, right? Maybe they're an enrichment vendor. Maybe they help you activate your inbound leads or to just manage your deliverability or automation there. That's no different from SaaS. It's smarter, right? You have like the new AI intelligence to it, but it's the same thing. Now you have hundreds of little AI agents you have to orchestrate and put together. So that burden, that work is still there. And so we think of ourselves as actually automating the work, not just automating one small task, right? So, you know, you'll see that in the market, you have a lot of these folks aiming to automate all the work, but most of the time, they're kind of just shallow wrappers. The reason for that is it's very easy to build a really cool demo, right? But it's really hard to do it at scale in production because that's where all the messiness creeps in, right? For a lot of these folks, the emails have like shallow personalization, their lead data is out of date, their email deliverability is terrible, their phone calls, quality of phone calls suck, right? And they're limited to very specific channels. And I have to go buy a bunch of tools to be like, oh, I gotta do like, automation here, I gotta do automation here. We've always thought about is like we're on the business of helping our customers generate ROI and outcomes. And to generate ROI and outcomes, you gotta do the entire thing. You gotta orchestrate the entire workflow. And so when we think about it at 11x, it's like, okay, what are all various like motions and things a modern go-to-market team needs to do to scale growth? So for your outbound motion, we first start by helping you identify your ICP when their propensity to buy is highest by leveraging extensive first and third party data. We then do a bunch of research, right, to create these hyper personalized sequences that are battle tested to not hallucinate, right? We automate this kind of multi channel sequence and manage all the deliverability under the hood. And we spend a bunch of time getting that right. You can't build that, right? It takes months and months and years of engineering to get these systems to be kind of battle tested. And now for your demand gen or marketing motion, we optimize campaigns that drive event attendance or traffic to your website or to your case study page. For inbound, we take visitors coming to your website. We help de-anonymize them. We qualify them. We help them book meetings, whether it's through email follow-ups or voice or chat or SMS or WhatsApp, multi-channel approaches. And on top of all that, like we know today, go-to-market teams live and die by like their source of truth, which is in their CRMs, right? So you have to have really advanced in-depth integrations to do lead routing, ownership mapping, bi-directional syncs, pull in context into campaigns, and all that takes a lot of time to really get right. So what I've always told the company here at 11x is like we're going to do the core job really, really, really well. We're not going to focus on the flashy stuff, just to make sure we do the core pieces and orchestrate everything together in an incredible way. And I would say the final thing is, we're really not focused on the SMB market. We're really focused on mid-market and enterprise. We want to help teams accelerate their growth, consolidate their tool sprawl, so you can focus on being creative rather than all the kind of plumbing. And we found that typically a lot of the very small companies, they have never done outbound before, they haven't done inbound, they don't have a good understanding of their ICP, and in many cases, they don't even know if they have product market fit, right? Which makes it really challenging for us. If we're in the business of helping our customers generate ROI, it makes it challenging for us to make them successful.
And you mentioned just before around some of the key differences between the digital workers mindset versus some of those other tools on the market. And it sounds like to me, your approach is where it's like you're hiring a digital worker as opposed to subscribing to software tools, AI software tools that a human has to still operate and piece together, 10, 15 different tools to do the job that your digital worker just handles.
Correct. And so that our goal is that instead of just being a little orchestrator, the human can now just focus on like being a creative director, right? They're like, hey, I have this idea. I want to go execute it and see what happens in the market. They come to our platform, they type something in, and boom, it's off to the races.
And you mentioned you're focusing on premium result as opposed to just, flashy AI features. Can you walk me through some of those key differentiators that you guys have, like when it comes to, I know when it comes to outbound, email deliverability is so important, and, making sure you've got that right infrastructure in place to make sure that that email that's been crafted, like you could come up with the best email, most
Totally.
personalized email that's got all the hooks and perfect call to action. But if it doesn't hit the person's inbox and ends up in their spam box, then it's kind of pointless. So if you can walk me through how
Totally.
11x handles that.
Yeah, I mean, it's where we spend a bunch of time, right? It's not like a sexy AI feature, right? But it's so important, right? Like you said, you do all this work, but doesn't land, right? So there's a lot of stuff we do under the hood. Like when we buy these kind of mailboxes, they're very premium mailboxes, right? Like they're like, we try to make sure that they have very high deliverability. We run deliverability tests on them every single week. If they start going sort of negative, we figure out why. Like, are we sending emails that are not high quality? Are they not converting? Like, what's actually going on? So it automatically triggers a deep dive of the kind of content being sent out. Then if we realize that the content's good, but maybe a few people marked it as spam, we take that mailbox, we take it out of the rotation, and we automatically add a new one, right? After it's warmed up, right? So all of this system is automated, just trying to figure out, hey, how do we make sure these mailboxes actually land, these emails actually land inside your primary mailbox, right? And there's a lot of sophistication that's kind of required to this. Think of even like the server, the sending the request to Google to actually send an email out, even those things we are kind of thinking of at that level of depth of like, how do we make sure we optimize that so you have the best shot of getting in front of your customers? And I think the thing that, we spent a ton of time on was automating this, because in the past, people would have to do this manually. And that basically meant that you wouldn't do it, right? And so we've kind of taken that approach across every channel, right? It's like, what can we do to make sure this thing delivers? And we track all of those deliverability metrics like a hawk.
And that's so useful. Now, you guys are leading a revolution with these digital workers. So, to make it real for our audience, keen to really dive into some customer stories that you have. And so, if you can just walk me through some of those real life relatable stories that you have, and if you can share some before and after wins that some of those customers have had using 11x.
Totally. For many of our customers, the status quo in the past was using maybe like a lead database, like hitting LinkedIn, or using SalesNav or cold calling, or having some generic industry sequences that would kind of go out. So in essence, ton of software, large human team trying to hit pipeline goals, right? So when we came in, so for one of our customers, we increased kind of SQLs by over 50%. It used to be a global team of 40 SDRs. They reduced it to 15, no impact in their pipeline, right? They were using Alice, and they focused their remaining team on really higher value, high converting activities, and kept maintaining strong output with Alice while reducing their operational overhead. Another one of our customers in the kind of media and events industry, historically did not have an outbound motion. For when this came out to 11x, for one of the first campaigns that did, we got them a 2.5% positive response rate, yeah, on just 3,000 emails that were sent. And the first positive response came 6 days after launching the first campaign, right? Because we optimize even when we send the emails out. Another customer, fintech industry, they had no SDRs and a weak kind of outbound sales motion. They're like, hey, we want to try a bunch of this cold outreach. They came to 11x. We sourced a couple thousand leads for them, 2% positive reply rate from that one campaign. We ran a re-engagement campaign for them. We sourced 300 leads, right? 300 contacts that were kind of engaging, 10% positive reply rate, right? And all of these then convert, or a large chunk of these convert into meetings and qualified opportunities, and ultimately to revenue. And so what we really found was that if you train the agent well, right, if you give it the right context, if you run the right types of plays, you get a lot of success. But now you just do it so much faster because we're doing all the orchestration.
Yeah, so true. And if you can just also walk us through what one of those specific plays look like, so the listeners can kind of grasp and put themselves in the shoes of one of your customers and can almost visualize how that would work for them. It could be either your Alice or Julian product. Just walk us through what one of those successful plays look like from, how, let's just say outbound, like what does that look like from start to finish?
Yeah. So I think a couple of different things. One of the things that we think about is one play that works really well is someone that visits your website, right? Now, there's a lot of data you can capture when someone's visiting your website. What page are they on? How long are they spending on those pages? If someone's on your pricing page and spends 10 minutes scrolling through, looking through everything, that's pretty high intent, right? Or if they're on one of your, competitive battle card pages, there's a lot of information and what they're trying to do on your website? What if they came in from a specific ad that you've been running, right? All of that contains kind of a lot of context. So we find that customers that take in all that context and run these website visitor plays on our platform tend to do really well because it's high intent, right? And these customers haven't taken any action on your website. They haven't signed up, they haven't done anything, right? But we can de-anonymize who they are when they visit your website and enroll them in these sequences that are always on, right? Anyone that visits your websites, we de-anonymize and we kind of enroll them, and they're constantly getting these outreaches, right? That are highly personalized, highly relevant based on the intent it displayed. That play tends to work really, really well. Now, for more cold plays, what we found work really well has been things that don't use the same signals that everyone else uses, right? If you raise funding, if you're hiring for a specific role, if you change roles, everyone has access to the same signal. Everyone pays the same vendors, right? So, when I changed my role, I got 1,000 emails in my mailbox. When we raised funding, I got 1,000 emails. I don't read any of them, right? And so those same signals don't really work. You have to find what are the creative signals for your business. And 11x makes that really easy, right? So I'll give you an example of a play that actually we ran. We were finding that hey, services businesses that have multiple branches, that have a lot of inbound phone calls, but that can't get to these phone calls quickly enough, they lose a lot of business, right? So we ran this play. We're all right, hey, Alice, go help me find all these services businesses that have multiple branches, that have a phone number on their website, and they have Yelp reviews or Google reviews not being responsive, right? That's not, it's not a signal you'll get from a lead database. It's a very custom play, right? And Alice went in, did a bunch of web research, and gave us a bunch of leads. And then the sequences that were sent out were, hey, I tried calling this phone number, the phone number from their website. No one picked up, right? What the chat talk about how Julian can automate this process for you, right? And so these are kinds of signals that you can now create, the kind of campaigns you can now run. And on our team, someone just had this idea and they just put it into our system and ran it. And that became a really awesome kind of play for us. And then, we've been seeing on the Julian side, what tends to happen is that someone comes in with high intent. They fill out a demo form, right, onto your website. And then it takes you 3 days to get back or 5 days to get back. In many cases, they've gone somewhere else, filled out some other demo form, and those guys call them back. So now you've already lost the customer, right? So what we found was that how do we capture this lead when they have the highest intent? And so if you deploy Julian, you come to the website, you fill out a form, your phone starts ringing, and it's Julian calling you back within a few seconds. Hey, Mark, I saw that you expressed interest in our website. Mind if I ask you a few questions about what you're looking to accomplish here, right?
Yeah, that speed to lead is so important, isn't it?
Speed to lead.
Sales managers are always talking about speed to lead, and with an AI agent that can call them at any time of the day, it basically eliminates that problem, doesn't it?
Works 24/7, doesn't sleep on weekends, right?
Yeah.
It's always there doing speed to lead. So
a lot of inquiries come through after hours as well. If you're a business that's selling on social media, if it's a diligent worker, they're not on social media during the workday. They're jumping on at night, seeing your ad, putting the inquiry through. If it's having to wait till the next morning before your sales reps clocks on for a call, that person's now back at work and is unable to get in touch with that prospect.
Yeah. And another play that works really well is prospects you've lost in the past. So your closed lost deals, right? We automatically re-engage them, say after a few months, right? But updates about the product and ask them, hey, I know things didn't work out last time, just curious to catch up and see how things are going. You'd be surprised how often that yields to re-engagements and customers again, right? And again, these things are always on, right? So you don't have to keep running this play. You don't have to have a reminder on your calendar. Oh, okay, every month I'm gonna go find all those leads and run this play. It just runs, always on, right? And accessing data from your CRM, highly personalizing, just keeps running.
So cool. And one of the cool features I saw within your outbound agent is that ability for that web search or that live web search. I've looked at a lot of lead database platforms in the past, like Zoom Info and the likes, and they typically have those traditional filters, what industry, yes, size of company. And if you're selling enterprise SaaS, they often work. But in a lot of niche industries, those traditional filter drop-down options don't really filter it down to a correct list that matches your ICP. And within your product, I saw that you can actually just use natural language and go, hey, I'm looking for these type of people. You can type in specific niches. I know the company that I work for, we go after builders who specifically have set designs. And you only really know this information if you actually scan their website and look if they've got set designs. And I know within your product, you've got that ability to actually search and scan their website and scrape their website for keywords information. So then it narrows down that list of targets that it's going after.
Exactly, exactly. And that's where we're like, now you're creating alpha. You're creating like intent where none existed in the past because you couldn't get access to that data. And that's kind of our thing of like, if you kind of remove all the barriers, now Mark, if you have this idea, you can just go do it, right?
Yeah, so cool. And now, as you move towards this vision of autonomous outcomes, how do you think about the balance between automation and oversight? I know this is a big deal for a lot of enterprise clients where reliability, security, and control are important factors. If you can just walk me through, how does 11x handle some of these concerns?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of enterprise customers, some really large enterprises, and you can imagine this is very top of mind, right? They don't want their brands misrepresented, right? And so for us, these guardrails are really, really key because if you think about AI agents, the same thing that makes them hallucinate is also what leads to them being super creative, right? It's like it's the flip of the same coin, right? And so what we do is we kind of employ a very multi-step model to catch and verify hallucinations. So once like, our underlying model is generate content, it goes through a bunch of checks, right? To make sure that nothing was said that it shouldn't have said, right? And a lot of that comes down to what information and context are you actually giving these agents. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out, right? And so that's where we spend a lot of time like packaging up all this information, all this research, everything we're doing and on behalf of our customers for a specific campaign, making sure the agent has exactly the information it needs to really craft like the perfect messaging. Now, when it comes to oversight, you need to make sure that you have all the right security, infosec, compliance requirements in place. It's really easy to, like I said earlier, to launch an MVP, but enterprise grade software requires enterprise grade controls. We're SOC 2 Type 2, we're CASA Tier 3 certified, we do extensive penetration testing. There's a lot of stuff we have to do here to make enterprise feel comfortable that they can trust us with their sensitive data. And we have access to your CRM. The CRM is like where all of your sales data lives, right? That's sensitive information, right? And so we really have to prove to our customers that we're being good stewards of this data. And a lot of this comes down to having like a really world-class engineering team, like, built of just amongst our team, we build like high grade financial software, right? Financial software has some of the strictest regulations in the world because we handle money, like we move money. And so taking those same practices here, I think gives our customers a lot of trust that, okay, like these guys know what they're doing and they know how to build these highly reliable products. So like you said, it's pretty key for us to demonstrate that to customers.
Now, we've talked a lot about what 11x does. Curious to ask, and this might be a bit more of a provocative question that's been on my mind. At 11x, do you eat your own dog food? And what I mean by that is, in your own go-to-market functions, is it powered by your own digital workers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So we're very heavy users of our own product, right? We don't have any SDRs or BDRs at 11x, right? With sales, we kind of grow our outbound and inbound pipeline by using our own tool. So every time you go to our website and you talk to Julian's trying to sell you, is trying to convert you into a demo. And a lot of our bookings from that come in through Julian talking to you when you visit our website, right? Anytime you visit our website, you don't talk to Julian, you get automatically enrolled in a sequence. It's like, hey, Mark, I saw you visited Alexa. Mind if I, shoot you over a few ideas, or maybe we should get on a call and discuss how we can help your company grow, right? We can hit you with really highly targeted content and messaging because we're always refining kind of our research agents, right? I mentioned earlier, we're always running these plays on top of our CRM data. So close loss plays or re-engagement plays. All these things are being done on our platform, even events, right? Like, hey, we want to host this like dinner today in San Francisco. Right, let's start a campaign where we take highly targeted leads, reach out to them and invite them to the event and get them to sign up, right? There's all these kind of campaigns that we can kind of do in one place on our platform. And, I've told the team internally that, I don't want to grow if you can't grow on using our own platform. So if you want to grow, like build it into the product and then we'll grow. And so it makes it it makes it a kind of constraining factor, which leads us to kind of grow a lot faster because whatever ideas we have, we productize it, and then we use it internally to grow. And if it works well, then we release it to our customers.
Super interesting. Now, the marketing playbook's evolved a lot, especially with the introduction of LLMs. And so I'm curious to know, like with 11x go-to-market strategy, what are some of the marketing plays you guys are running at the moment that you're finding some traction and success with?
Yeah, totally. I think in the past we were blessed to get a ton of inbound, right? A lot of our historic customers have actually come knocking at our door, including some of the largest enterprises in the world. And for capturing that inbound demand, that like the kind of demo we have of Julian trying to close them, trying to get them out of the meeting, really really helps kind of juice that pipeline, right? And outbound, like I mentioned earlier, you can't use the same signals, right? So can't do the same like company raises funding or any of those types of things. So we're always trying to find the very specific signals that matter for our business. Now, it could be, a company that's aggressively growing and hiring SDRs. That makes sense, right? It could also be like the example I gave earlier around services businesses, right? It could also be we're seeing a lot of traction in companies that have a ton of inbound. So think, a company that has a lot of SMBs visiting their website and they can't afford to have a rep actually talk to them and handle all of that. So how do we automate that? So we'll be using that as a play to reach out to these types of companies. We do a lot of website visitor re-engagement plays. We do a lot of speed to lead. We do a lot of close loss campaigns. The biggest difference here is that it only takes us minutes to set these up instead of weeks, right? We take our best customers, we run lookalike campaigns for them to find other customers like them and share those case studies, right? The example I gave earlier of the services businesses, it was literally just a rep who had this idea and then create the campaign. So it kind of democratizes the company's growth in some way. If you have an interesting, cool idea, you can just go and test it on our platform.
And have you seen the strategy evolve over time, as the market evolves and starts adopting this technology more, and even your own technology as that evolves? Have you seen your go-to-market strategy evolve at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think as most startups do, we start out with smaller companies that are looking to grow quickly without building a large go-to-market org. And as I mentioned earlier, we evolved from that to move much more upmarket, you know, and that required like, we had to come up with a lot of sophisticated strategies to actually get in front of our prospective buyers. We had to mature our own products to have that kind of level of integration that our large customers needed to succeed. We've been I think the really fortunate position that we've been in is that as we make our product better, we grow faster, which means we learn from more customers. What we learn from them, we put back into our product, which helps us grow faster, which means we get more feedback from customers. And it's like this kind of cycle kind of builds and compounds on itself because our product is intrinsically tied to our growth, right? So if we don't make a product better, we don't grow, right? I think that kind of feedback loop is very rare for companies, only for companies that are in the go-to-market space who are kind of building these end-to-end digital workers. So yeah, we've definitely moved a lot more up market and used our product as a forcing function for that.
Yeah, and the speed at which AI technology is evolving is something I've never seen before, and I'm sure
Totally.
for you at the helm at 11x, it's probably something that keeps you up at night just to keep up with that ever evolving
Totally.
advancement in AI technology. I have a question just around you guys are pioneering a totally new category, and no doubt you've got those early adopters, and then you've got certain people who might be late to the party. What's been like the hardest part about educating the market and winning some of those early adopters?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Typically, when new technology comes out, it has a lot of its kinks and issues. So people are kind of like, cautiously optimistic, investing in it, experimenting in it. And the first big AI application was ChatGPT, and it was magical, right? So that set the bar really, really high for what people expected these AI agents to be able to do, right? The kind of like videos it could generate, the kind of images it could generate, the kind of conversation you could have with it, it's kind of insane, right? It's trained on the entire world's knowledge. And so, what we saw was that, the first wave of agents, people expected them to be perfect, like perfect and better than the humans. We would talk to these customers like, yeah, we want you to, book all these things for us and like build a ton of pipeline. And we're like, okay, but what are you getting today? And it's a fraction of that, right? So they expected this like these AI agents with this magical thing. And as an industry over the last 1 year, I think people have realized, this is not some magical panacea, but you have to put in the reps. You have to experiment. You have to train these agents to get outcomes. So I think a lot of what we do when we sort of sell to customers is we're actually doing kind of like a reverse interview. Like, are you even ready to have AI agents deployed? Right? Because it's not something you can just kind of like, have someone else manage. Like you have to own it. It has to be a key part of your strategy. Someone has to be responsible for making you successful. Because if they're not, we won't be able to do that for you, right? Like you have the most context, the most knowledge and learnings about your business, right? And you need to bring that to our agents so we can help you use our agents in the best way, right? So I think a lot of training has been like, hey, you need the strong ownership on your side. This needs to be a key part of your strategy, and it's going to take a little bit of time to make it work perfectly, right? But if you put in that investment, it will really, really compound. used to be how things were done in the past. But because the first real big application with ChatGPT was so good, people were like, oh man, this can do anything and everything.
So it's more that education, setting those expectations, making sure you're getting that buy-in from those that are investing in this type of technology.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's now shift gears for a moment because I saw that 11x recently raised over $70 million from two absolute heavyweights, Andreessen Horowitz and Benchmark. And for those not familiar, these are the same venture capital firms that back the likes of Airbnb, Facebook, Figma, Instagram, Pinterest, Slack, basically any well recognized brand, they're probably behind it. So they know how to pick winners, and now they're backing 11x. So if you can take us just behind the curtain, like how did you first get connected with Andreessen and Benchmark?
Yeah, the cool thing here was that Lebanex was the first company to actually create a category for digital workers for Revenue teams. And this is back in the day before, GPT like 3 and 4 had just come out, right? And so we were lucky to be quite early. And because we were early, we kind of catapulted that into a lot of demand. And so a lot of this demand actually started coming inbound into us, right? We started having this insane growth curve before any of these, verticalized AI companies had really taken off, right? And I think the thing that I think convinced, A16 to really lead our Series B, which was, our latest round, was I think twofold. One was the quality, the tenacity, like the hyper focus of the team on how do we grow very quickly and capture this market. The second one was our unique vision for the space. Our vision was never just build Alice and Julian and just have these two digital workers in the market. The vision was to have an entire go-to-market digital workforce, right, to help automate all of the laborious work and ultimately become a system of orchestration and a record, right? If we're already doing all the actions on behalf of our customers, then it's much easier to replace the underlying system of record as well, right? Because we're replacing all the inputs and outputs into it. And so in that vision of like imagine having this system where like everything feeds to each other, like our SDR agent talks to our AE agent, talks to our RevOps agent, talks to our marketing agent. They're all learning and feeding back insights from everything they're seeing, and the entire system keeps getting better and better and better. Like that's what I think was a really compelling vision, because we didn't want to create just like the best like phone agent or the best like SDR agent or the best marketing agent. We want to create this entire team that works together, and that was kind of the audacity of the vision we had when we raised,
And having gone through that capital raising process myself through VCs with my own startups, I know that they're notorious for deep due diligence, technical audits, team reviews, scenario modeling. How was that process like for you guys?
you know, it's basically what you imagine. We went through sort of all of that. Our investors did very, very deep customer diligence to talk to a huge chunk of our customers. Understood, hey, what's working, what's not working, why are you betting on this team? How can this team improve? And just shared all those insights back to us actually as part of the due diligence, right? Which is actually fantastic. They asked us our product roadmaps, why we made the decisions we were making, how we were actually going to get to our vision, right? What are all the baby steps you're taking now to actually make that a reality? And then how do you think about hiring attractive talent, right? The company started in London and moved to San Francisco. And so how are you going to attract the best talent? How are you going to hire leaders, and what evidence do you have of that? So a company went from like Series A to Series B in a matter of months, right? So it grew very, very quickly. And so these are all the pieces we dug into to make sure that, this team had a path to get towards that crazy vision.
It's interesting. You just mentioned, they were asking all these hard hitting questions. And I find that process of going through raising capital, speaking to VCs, it almost creates accountability for founders and leaders within companies because typically you keep your team accountable, but there's normally no one that keeps you accountable to make sure you're taking all the right steps. You've dotted the I's, crossed the T's. And it sounds like you had a similar experience where going through that VC process, it almost makes sure, you've got your house in order as well.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah, and having now got backing from the most well-known VC firms in the world, like what has that meant for X from like a validation perspective?
It's been really amazing to have the validation because in our space there's like hundreds and thousands of startups, right? All trying to compete for this really big pie. And if you're a prospective buyer, there's so much noise in the market to like who should you use? You do a search and you see 100 startups. Like who do you bet on? Right? They're all saying the same thing. So how do you actually realize what's true and what's not? I think having the credibility of some of the largest investors in the world backing us gets us in the door at these larger companies. are moving up market. And once we're in the door, we're able to do a pretty good job of closing. So, huge shout out to A16Z and Benchmark for really helping open these doors, right? And getting us in front of these like really large companies so we can demonstrate everything we're doing and kind of the shift in mindset that we're causing in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from someone who's gone through the process of vetting different software for my own companies, I know that one thing that always goes through my mind, especially with some of these newer tech companies, you're always thinking, is this company going to be around in 6, 12 months? Like if I'm going to integrate this across my whole organization, put my reputation on the line to vouch for this software, like is this software company going to be around in 6 months? And I think, having backing like what you guys have done gives a lot of confidence to those people looking at choosing a software vendor. Now, you've also personally invested in over 40 startups yourself. So you've sat on both sides of the table. Keen to understand, like, what's the number one mistake you see founders make when raising capital?
Yeah, in the earliest stages, all that matters is the team and is it a problem worth solving in big market, right? Investors know that teams frequently change ideas. So in fact, some of the largest companies we know today started out as something completely different, right? So too often I'll see a team focus too much on like the specific solution to the problem or specific like feature set compared to a competitor without really grounding the conversation in the two things that I mentioned above. Because building a product is in your control and should be a focus. But you need to answer these bigger meta questions. Like what happens if you build the best product? Like, is that even a problem or a product that people will pay for? Will they pay a lot of money for it? How big is that market, right? Is it going to actually support the returns you need for these VCs to actually invest in your business? Can you make billions of dollars in revenue if your vision is right and you execute well, right? So too often people are like, oh, like, yeah, we're going to launch this thing because like this other product is not doing this one thing well. Okay, but if you did that one thing well, what happens? Like, paint for me a world. What does the world look like if you exist, right? And so that's kind of what I always recommend to founders, like, hey, you need to focus on these things and really sell your team, right? Your team is like, who's going to actually do all this work? I can come here and say, hey, I'm going to make a cure for cancer, but I don't have any medical background, so it's not going to work, right? So it's like, how are you going to actually, within your team, going to make something happen?
Yeah, so true. And we've seen that the investment landscape evolve over recent times. It used to be all about scale at all costs, huge amounts of money from Silicon Valley getting poured into companies that, could be burning millions, billions of dollars. What have you seen based in Silicon? Have you seen this be the mindset shift within VC companies, or is it now shifting more towards trying to find companies that are more profitable, or is it still this scale at all cost?
It's still scale at all costs. I think because with AI, you can build and grow a lot quicker, right? So now the revenue growth that venture capitalists are expecting to see needs to be much, much higher than it used to be in the past, right? People need to be able to grow a lot quicker and leverage and compound much faster with smaller teams, right? Just kind of AI is rewriting like how things are done. Like, you can build a lot faster. You can hire a lot less. You can automate a lot of things internally. So small teams can have massive, massive impact. And what that means is that venture capitalists are betting a lot more different bets because of transformation technology. It feels like 1990s era all over again, right? You take a bunch of bets. Some of them will survive. There'll be a huge graveyard, but the kind of learnings that come out of this period will be really, really important.
So you're seeing it's almost like a full reset, and this whole AI era has now basically brought it back to that, that internet boom era of new startups popping up, and this hyper risky environment where they're just throwing money into these companies.
But I think here's the thing, right? These companies are generating real revenue. The difference is in the late 1990s when we had the internet era, these companies were just throwing money but not generating any revenue. Here, like, you have these two-person startups generating tons of revenue, right? So there's something real there, right? People are willing to pay for the value they're getting, which makes it a really exciting time like never before.
Now let's look ahead a little. If digital work has evolved the way you envision, keen to hear from yourself. Which GTM role do you see changing first? Is it the SDR? Is it the AE? Is it customer success, or is it something else?
Frankly, I think all of these roles are going to evolve massively, and they already are, right? We feel that, as a company, we feel that the SDRs, a lot of the efforts will kind of be shifted towards higher, more creative campaign creation rather than focusing on things that we automate, such as account research or cold emailing, right? In fact, we expect that most SDRs will become like either junior account executives or junior growth team members or junior marketers right off the bat. And companies will invest a lot more in training them early on rather than having them first kind of be SDRs. I think we see the same thing in sales. The number of AI tools that exist today to help reps get better faster, you'll see the rise of like these super sellers that become a super seller very, very, very quickly given all the tools that are helping. You no longer need to have, each rep be the best, I don't know, at giving a demo. They'll have a sub agent that can go and jump into a call and give a demo, right? It'll be the best at giving a demo. Now they can go in and like work on the strategic deals, build the relationships. Well, they have these sub agents help them with their work. Customer success, I think, will become full stack. What we had started seeing was that the customer success role was getting like parceled out. So you'd have people that help you like onboard, implement, support, then like do renewals and expansions. And it's really kind of becoming like this giant conglomerate. Whereas I think now it'll be compressed and become much more full stack. The CSMs, can do everything. They'll be able to do onboarding, support, renewals, POC conversions, because not all these different pieces of data are flowing together and they have a lot of agents helping them in various pieces. Right. And that's how we operate our internal CS team today. Like we don't have 4 different compartmentalized roles. It's the full stack CSM. That's what we call it internally.
So you don't see it as these AI agents are going to completely take over all human jobs. You see it more as like a co-worker relationship where humans will be elevated to be able to work on more meaningful work within the organization and kind of consolidating rather than having these specialized roles per se for all these different functions, being able to limit the number of stakeholders that the customer has to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've typically seen that with kind of every technology shift that's happened in the past, right? Like it doesn't like it may like kill certain jobs or make certain things redundant, but it creates so many more, right? Because now what's possible, what you can actually do, is just so much more massive. And so that's kind of what I expect. I expect like everyone, every single IC or individual contributor in the world out there to basically become like a manager, like a director of these agents to get work done, right? And as these agents keep getting better and better, they keep directing higher and higher level things, right? So today it might be like do the small workflow. Tomorrow it might be like, all right, let's figure out how to like make a ton of revenue. And later on it might be like, hey, let's figure out how to run this company, right? So we'll keep getting better and better as these underlying models get better and better. Now, if we get to AGI, like all bets are off. Like I don't know what's gonna happen, but that's my current view.
Yeah. Well, on that same train of thought, like let's just fast forward 3 to 5 years from now. AI agents are now part of the normal org chart. All the companies are adopting it. Like, what do you see our go-to-market teams actually looking like at that point?
I think you'll have these generalists. You'll have these really smart generalists that are looking across like entire end-to-end things. So instead of just being like, hey, I just do like paid ads, right? Or I just do like these marketing things, or I just do like this SDR stuff. Now they can look across the entire pipeline and be like, all right, like I need to like get more revenue. Here's all the tools and sub agents at my disposal. How can I make that happen? Right. And so I think each person will now just have so much more leverage. It's like every person can kind of be the mini CEO, right? And make things happen. Because now they have all these little agents that can help them with various pieces that work well together. And
Yeah.
so, why do these things manually when there's a lot of pieces you can just automate? And so I think people will be able to like kind of get elevated and think through the entire end to end of whatever business workflow or process or objective they're trying to solve for. And those things will just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I'm really excited about what teams and companies look like in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting because it's almost going full circle, isn't it? Like before the Industrial Revolution, you had these generalist artisans that were jack of all
Yeah.
trades, and then the introduction of the machine worker. Everyone started becoming specialized roles with middle management overlaid on that. And from what you're saying, it sounds like it's almost going full circle where generalists will start rising up again, but the difference this time is they've got a team of these AI agents or digital workers that they can empower.
Yeah. And they'll just have much more visibility, right? So instead of just focus on one slice to look at the entire business problem and be like, all right, I can solve this problem.
So interesting. Now, finally, what's on the horizon for 11x? If you can share some of the exciting new features, new markets, or maybe even new categories of digital workers that you're planning on launching soon.
You know, the one of the things that we really invest in at 11x is building a world-class team. And so our team ships at kind of breakneck speed, and we're always thinking about, what's next, where's the future, what do we need to build to get to the future. And so, we already have this our chatbot coming out of beta. We'll hook very nicely to Julian, to our voice product, as well as our email agents. we're working on syncing your entire CRM, kind of our system, so our agents can get these really unique insights about all that rich data that's kind of inside your CRM, all your past interactions with a prospect or customer, be able to sort of construct an entire engagement history of every interaction we have with a prospect and use that when you're reaching out to them again, right? We're working on these autonomous agents that like really help you with your ICPs and create your entire campaigns kind of end to end, and like net new digital workers to help sales teams close deals or RevOps optimize the revenue engine and a whole lot more. So very, very excited about what's coming up in the next couple of months.
It sounds exciting. And so it sounds like you guys are really doubling down on that, the revenue side of businesses.
Correct.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Last question. And this is how we wrap up every episode. If you can add one new page to the GTM playbook, whether it's a tactic, a mindset, or a principle you now swear by, what would it be and why?
The thing I'm going to pick is the principle. And this might sound a little cliche, but experimentation is a muscle. It's a true competitive advantage today, right? You need to be patient to train these systems, these AI agents, to actually start seeing the compounding benefits, right? You don't hire an SDR and expect them to be the best from day one, right? And once you make that investment, now you kind of have this always on digital worker that works for you 24/7. You want to go after a new market? You want to launch a new product? Just create the marketing material and boom, upload it and it's good to go, right? But that initial learning, the initial experimentation needs to happen. Not everything you do will work from day one. In fact, a lot of it won't, right? But you get those reps in now, it's going to be much better than getting those reps in 6 months from now when all your competitors are already doing it and you're already behind the curve, right? If you look at every technology shift that's happened in the past, it's always been people who like jump on it early, learn how to harness the power, are the ones that end up surviving, right? So all the customers I talk to, I'm like, hey, like treat this like an existential threat to your business and learn, experiment, and see what's working. Don't just give up after a week, because these systems need time to bake and learn and help you business grow effectively.
Prahav, this has been a super interesting conversation. I could probably talk to you for hours, but we're going to have to wrap it up there. Now, if people want to learn more about X or even connect with yourself, how should they go about that?
You can find me on LinkedIn or email me at pj@11x.ai.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Prahav, for jumping on the podcast today, and look forward to catching up next time.
Perfect. Thank you for having me, Mark.